Grady Powell, host of Forged in Fire.
Kyle Mann.
I'm Jay Warner Wallace.
Kira Davis.
It's Ben Adams.
Hey, this is Dave Baker.
Carrie Pomeroli.
This is Mike Reiner.
This is Ethan Nicole.
This is Leanne Morgan.
It's Graham Parker, the 5th GP, and this is why you should never.
Never.
How I got suckered in.
I'm so embarrassed that I'm here.
You're wasting your time. You got better things to do.
Never listen.
Those darling, yummy Reverend and the Reprobate.
This is one of those times.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Reverend and the Reprobate. My name is Lucas Pinkard. I'm an actual pastor, and we'll be playing the part of the Reverend today. With me, as always, is my partner in crime, a big man, the myth, the legend. It's Big Dan Gibson. What's going on, buddy?
When am I going to get to be the Reverend?
As soon as you get ordained.
I'm never doing that.
Okay, so then never. Hey, thanks a lot for looking at your laptop when we're supposed to be doing intros and showing how much interest you have in our program. No, yeah. So today on the show we've got.
Do we need to redo that?
No, that was really well played. I love the layout. We've got two special guests. The first is a dear friend of ours, Miss Heather Swann. And Heather is actually who turned us on to our guest today. Heather, what's going on over in the studio room?
Not much. Just listening.
So happy to be here.
How's the weather out there?
I don't know. I haven't been out in a while.
Yeah, well, the studio is the warmest room that we have.
It's
and
fantastic.
This is like the engineering room. And Heather was in here earlier and was like, I need to thaw out. So do you feel thawed?
Partially.
Okay, well.
I'm getting there.
Perfect.
But yeah, so Heather, you're a big fan of Lily's and her podcast.
Yeah, Lily Wood is the name of the guest that we have on today from NPE Stories.
I don't know if you call it a fan.
You just
It's more of
me.
It's therapy. It's less of a fan thing and more of a therapy thing.
Okay, so
I am grateful for Lily Wood.
So give everybody the overview of what Lily does on NPE Stories.
She has made a platform for people to tell their NPE story so that other people can listen to it and relate, because there's not a lot of resources for us.
Okay, and we get into Lily about what an NPE is, why it is that it's one of the largest, one of the quickest growing populations of people, even though it's kind of like this sliver of a segment, is that people are discovering every day that they are NPEs, which means not parent expected, and what was the other one, Heather?
Non-Paternal Event.
Non-Paternal Event. So she dives into what exactly those terms, those words mean. She tells us about her own story, how she found out that she was an NPE, what's happened on NPE Stories.
How her family reacted.
Yeah, how her family reacted, what their relationships are like now, how she had to break the news to her husband and her kids. And she tells us a story so good that it might just save the world in controlled rowdiness. So you guys, fasten your seatbelts. Make sure that you hit the like and subscribe buttons. Ding the little bell if you want notifications whenever new episodes come out. And for now, without any further ado, it's Lily Wood.
Eli, NASCAR's dumb.
Well, hey, Big Dan, Expo on our sweet, clean airwaves today. We've got a just magnificent lady who I was first told about because a friend of mine was experiencing some things that our guest today's podcast has to do with. She is the host of NPE Stories. She has not only a wonderful, lovely voice, but a great demeanor with her guests as they are working their way through difficult situations. It is the lovely, the talented Miss Lily Wood. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So you host a podcast called NPE Stories. And before we dive into what exactly you do on the podcast, can you first explain to us like what an NPE is? Because there's a lot of acronyms that are specific to this world.
I know NPC, and that's about it, which is a video game term.
For non-playable character?
Yeah, NPE I'm fascinated to learn more about.
Totally different.
It's a little different.
Yeah.
Yes. Great question. Okay. NPE is an acronym. And now it has two definitions. I'll try not to use too many acronyms, but we do have a lot of them. NPE, we now say it's not parent expected.
Okay.
But it comes from a genealogical term, non-paternal event or non-paternity event. It's where when people were doing family trees or DNA testing, they found out that you weren't related to one or both of your parents. Usually one parent, usually the father. So non-paternity event. That is what an NPE is.
Okay, so when we're talking about specifically, let's say, guests on your show, or in my case, my friend who found out that she had a non-paternity event, do we identify them as like, this person is an NPE, this person had an NPE? Because that seems like a strange bit of minutia that I've caught myself in a couple of times. I'm like, no, my friend is our...
Yeah.
She knows about her dad now.
Was created.
Yeah.
Yes, both. Okay, right, both. So it's both. So it wasn't an event. At one point, people were saying they had an NPE, but now people are identifying, myself included, just because we're like, what do we call ourselves? People who our dads aren't our dads? Like, so we started calling ourselves NPEs. So it can be used both ways.
So
You can say someone had an NPE or they are an NPE.
So am I technically a PE?
Yes.
Parent expected?
Yeah. Or
Yes.
or paternally expected?
Paternally expected.
Oh, no.
Cool. That also would mean like that's what we should start calling
Hey,
your
we're
son.
already going into a lot of acronyms,
Yeah.
and I love it.
We're good. So you've talked a little bit on your show about your story, and if you want to dive into that, I would love to. But what I want to know is what inspired you to start the podcast. So can you start us on like what that journey looked like for you?
Yes. So I took a DNA test and got shocking results in 2019, April 2019. I opened my DNA results. I took an Ancestry DNA test kit. You spit in a tube. And when I got my results back, and here I was thinking, oh, how French am I? What's my percentage? My dad's French. I speak French. I was raised by my French Canadian family. I am named after my French grandmother, Lily Guimau. And my results were so confusing. They showed, well, at the time, 1% French. It's actually been, they've reconfigured their databases. It's actually now 0% French. But there's another tab that you can get through. Instead of just your composition, you can also get DNA matches. And this is all the people that have also taken a DNA test kit. And if they want to make their profile public, they can. And you can see who your ancestors are and who your relatives are. And we're talking thousands of people. I mean, there's over at least 30 million people that have taken just the Ancestry kit. But there's also 23andMe, there's MyHeritage, there's other DNA testing companies, and they have relatively affordable, $99, $59 on Black Friday. People give them away as gifts. But anyway, I got my DNA results, and a half brother showed up at the very top of my list.
Whoa.
But I don't have a brother. So
Were you raised as an only child?
Nope, I have a sister.
Okay.
So to have a brother show up was a little confusing, very shocking. I had to dive into the world of what does 1400 centimorgans mean? Well, how can we share that? And after probably the worst day of my entire life, going over to my mom's house and finding out, oh, yes, your dad isn't your dad, through a terrible conversation. That's when I found out that day I was an NPE.
Wow.
And I had a brother out there and a different father. And actually, I also had a sister, another one, and aunts and uncles and grandparents and cousins and a whole family out there that I've never met. And I guess I'm apparently related to. And that means my actual dad who raised me isn't my dad, and my sister is, well, I guess that means she's only my half sister. So from there, I'm shocked and I'm Googling it, and I don't have this NPE word. So I'm
Right.
Googling things like, my dad's not my dad, and I don't even know what I'm Googling. What do you do when you find out you're not related to your family?
Yeah, that's got to be a foundational, shocking event.
Yeah, no
everything
no
you
doubt.
thought to be true, which I mean,
Totally
I
shocking.
guess, and I'm curious on, and I'm not trying to interrupt you, but you did find out that you have this extended family you weren't aware of. Have you, become close with any of them? Is that kind of a positive or some kind of a silver lining? And like you said, the worst day of your life.
Yes. Yes. And in so many cases, there is that silver lining. People are opened into the family. They see their similarities. They're mirrored, and they're finally like, this makes so much sense. I'm related to you. In my particular case, when I first reached out to my biological father, because I did that day, I wasn't sure if he was a good guy, if he was a bad guy, if he was alive. I'm Googling him. I have a name for my mom. I was like, did he rape you? I don't know. I have so many questions, and my mom assured me, no, it was consensual. It was for better or worse, I guess, a one-night stand on a business trip. I found him, I emailed him, and at first it seemed very promising. His emails, they were formal, but he said, I do remember your mother, and we will bring clarity to this situation. And I was like, okay, good. He sounds normal. We're going to talk. Right. He said when he was back in the country, he'd talk to me. And then after a couple of very strange email exchanges, there was all of a sudden more of a coldness to it. He even called me Lulu once. My name is Lily. I thought there were some odd things happening.
Yikes.
And then he pretty much went silent. He said his family follows his lead, and he doesn't think of me. I don't remember exactly the wording, but he doesn't consider me a true daughter, even though I am his biological daughter. He doesn't consider me an offspring. And he wasn't really interested in furthering a relationship at that point. And then he gave me some medical history, and that was about it. And that was 3 years ago. Wow. So in my particular case, he wasn't interested in pursuing a relationship.
So I want to get into some of like what that looks like, from a psychological perspective. But before we head into that, let's hop back to where we were at in the story, where you're trying to Google how do you find out what you are? So you're how do you know when your dad's not your dad, when your family's not your family?
Yeah.
I'm sure you're coming across a lot of stuff about adoption in those records. And as a pastor, we work with kids who are like that find out. I say kids with adults who find out as adults that they're not their parents' kids. And there's lots of support groups for that are out there. So I'm sure you're coming across a lot of those things, but that's not your experience. How do you whittle down and figure out that you are an NPE and what that even means?
Oh, that is so good that you pointed that out, because we actually identify very closely with the adoptee community. I just got back from a retreat this weekend, a healing retreat that was half adoptees, half NPEs. Wow. But yes, they've known about the trauma of being the child of adoption, or even the birth mother having to give up your child, and oftentimes adoptee parents. So that exists already, right? The resources for the adoptee, and I identify a lot with that community. But yeah, for the actual NPE community, it's a little different. We identify with late discovery adoptees. That's where they're told as an adult, or they find out as an adult that they were adopted, which is similar to my situation, because I was an adult when I found out, which if it's not part of your storyline as a child, knowing who your true genetic parents are, it's incredibly traumatizing as an adult to find out.
Yeah,
one or both of your parents.
The adoptees that know growing up, that's kind of like it's something that we all know about. You have a frame of reference for that, but for the late discovery and the NPEs, you just don't even have a frame of reference of how you're supposed to mentally compartmentalize that.
Yes.
Like, where do you even put it?
Was that Heather talking?
That was Heather.
Me.
Yeah, that was Heather talking.
That's me.
Yeah.
Because even when you have a good experience like I did, it still comes with a myriad of complications and mental hoops that you have to hop through. Oh, yeah, completely. Because so there's the whole secrecy thing, and then you're not really who you thought you were. You have to rethink of yourself. And then sometimes there's actually large changes, like finding out you're 50% Ashkenazi Jew, so your ethnicity is different, or the religion, or just, for me it was just, I'm not half French, I'm actually half Irish and Spanish. That's not, or Irish and Italian. I don't even know my new composition, but mine is still not that different. I'm still like white European, right? But for some people, my friend Kara, she was raised in a biracial home.
a white mother and a black father, and her siblings are a range of skin tones, and she just always thought she took more after her mother's side, and then she actually found out, no, her true biological father is also white. Oops, she would be fine me mentioning that. But yeah, so there's so much with your identity you have to rethink when you find out the truth about your genetic identity and your family, who your real family of origin should have been.
So part of what you do on NPE Stories is you help people walk through this part of the process, right? You help them not just unpack their story, but as one of the things I love about the way that you do the podcast is that you don't step on anybody's toes as they're telling the story, but you do have a way of actively listening that helps them draw out maybe some things that they haven't considered. And I really appreciate in the way that you conduct the interviews and how that process works. So for you, and especially with your guests, when they start talking about, I was a different ethnicity, or, when I found my birth parents or whatever, how that changed my perspective on myself, right? For you, how did that work? How did you walk through that process?
For me personally, finding out who my biological father was.
I guess in the change of identity is really more what I'm specifically thinking about. You find out you're not French, that you're actually, Irish and Italian, which, you're kind of still in the same area of the continent, but it's a shock to you because you go from being maybe, I'm Marie Antoinette to now, you could be Mary Queen of Scots. It completely, changes where you're at. So how do you walk through that process of having your identity shaken in that way?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Because I still don't know. I don't know. How do I do it? I'm still doing it. Sometimes I'll be like, oh yes, I have acceptance. I have my composition right in front of me. I understand now. And then every once in a while it'll be like St. Patrick's Day. And all of a sudden it's March 17th and I'm like, oh, now I'm a little bit Irish. I guess I didn't really think about this before. So little things will pop into my head. I'm still kind of processing it. Where am I with my identity? I think back to every Christmas growing up and every summer holiday, and those should have been different. I should have been, there's no shoulds, but if I had been raised with my true biological parents, my holidays would have looked differently, perhaps. I would have had different memories created with different family members, and my biological father would have been a part of those. Perhaps, again, who knows? He could have also chosen to reject me as a baby, though I find that much harder to believe.
Yeah.
So I'm still processing that. I don't think there's any one right or wrong way to go about this, and I never try to give advice, but I like people just to share what works for them. Yeah. And every once in a while, someone will be like, oh, that's a good idea, journaling, or, oh, I'll join this support group, or, okay, maybe I'll try a therapist.
Or listen to a great podcast.
Yeah,
and just hear people's stories that are like yours. So you go, okay, I'm not crazy for feeling that way.
Yes. Community, right? To just be able to listen to someone that's gone through the same thing as you. You can nod along with them and be like, oh, they get it too. I know that feeling. Just community. You don't even have to give a lot of backstory when someone has had a similar situation. It's like when someone has lost someone really close to them, maybe a spouse, and they're grieving. They don't necessarily want to talk about chit-chat, perhaps not. They want to be around other people that understand that same feeling of loss and grief that they're going through. And when I'm in my community or listening to NPE stories, it is a form of therapy for me. I'm not even really a host that asks a lot of questions. I'm just going to press the record button. It's your space. We'll make it a safe space for you and share what you want. I might help them along with a couple of questions just to clarify. But they can share whatever they feel like.
And I do really love that, is allowing the person that you had on the opportunity and the space to tell their story in the way that they lived and experienced it and how they're feeling with it now.
Yeah. So I was curious. You mentioned, I'm going to go into a question now.
Yeah, nice.
But I'm curious. You mentioned you have a sister that is technically half sister. Mm-hmm. What on in your journey and having in your personal journey and also with the stories that you've discovered and the people you've met, how does becoming an NPE, or I guess discovering you're an NPE, how does that affect typically existing familial ties?
Yeah, that's it gets kind of tricky here.
Complicated.
Because usually a secret's been kept for a long time, right? Secret, the mother most likely in my case, my mom is the one that had sex and 9 months later had a baby. So if anyone knew I didn't belong to my dad, she would probably have a pretty good idea. So going into my sister, or any sister, a lot of times when the truth comes out that someone in the family is an NPE, those sisters or brothers, they can be kind of protective of their parents. And sometimes they'll be supportive. I guess I'm thinking of myself and the people I was with this weekend. There can almost be like, let's sweep this under the rug. I don't want to talk about it too much.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. Your dad still loves you. Nothing's changed. But you're like, for the NPE, everything has changed.
I think that's how, what you're saying, like your sister might, I think that's how most people in general family react. Like,
I know. Yes, I do too. I'm just trying not to
you.
like discredit the people that occasionally have a supportive sister, but a lot of or brother. But a lot of times it's okay. We talked about it that one day. That was good.
Yeah.
So, what is your side dish you're bringing for Easter? It's like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
We're not just going to act like everything's normal here. Although that's what my family would have preferred.
Oh, I'm sure if they feel like you mentioned protective over the familial, the parents. Do you think that because it feels like, and I'm kind of reading in between the lines, correct me if I'm wrong, but that they might feel that there's a mom betrayed dad, and therefore you're a part of that. Is that you think some of the psychology into why they may
wonder.
not just accept or not care that you're someone else's son? It doesn't matter, or daughter. It doesn't matter how I relate to you.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, that might be part of it. In my case, I think it was just my sister wants, loves my mom,
Right.
and wants to immediately. You don't want to think your parents are wrong. You forget they're fallible and they can make mistakes, and just immediately wants to, without hearing any backstory what is the thing we always hear? Your parents did the best they could. Your mom did the best they could. And that statement, and I think I've even used it, and I try not to anymore, because was that really not telling your child who their true parent is that really the best you could have done? I think it's just something we say to be nice to our parents because we don't want to say that they're wrong sometimes and they make terrible mistakes, and they should perhaps have consequences for that. And so my sister, it may have been the affair, but I think she just wanted to side with my mother, which is in its own way sweet and loyal, but she wanted to side with my mother without even considering that this was devastating to my life.
Yeah. So how did that relationship with you and your dad who raised you, right? How did that affect y'all's relationship, and what was that process like for y'all? Did he know, or was this a surprise to him as well?
Yes, so with and we call that birth certificate father, the father that raised me, BCF, and that's because his was the name on my birth certificate. He did not know, no clue.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea either. My mother told him this was your child. Yay, we're having another baby. No one knew. She took this secret, as far as I can tell. If she hadn't been found out, she probably wouldn't have told anyone, although I did later find out she told my stepdad. But so my birth certificate father never knew either. We had always been a little distant the last 5-10 years anyway, and so that, now I realize I'm not his true biological child, right? So there's that disconnect might actually make a little bit of sense. Differences in opinions and whatnot, never truly got along, and different humors, and so now I kind of see, oh, that's why. It's because I'm not actually his child. But he said what most dads say. It's the kind, right thing to say. He said something, I'm paraphrasing, oh, this doesn't matter to me, nothing's different, nothing's changed, you'll always be my daughter.
Right.
And that's the thing you would say to a child, right? It's kind of him, but it's not the truth. I appreciate that he still thinks he's my dad, but he wasn't. He isn't. But yes, he's my dad.
Yeah.
He's my dad.
Yeah, so it seems like there's just a breadth of emotion and things that are tied to it. Now, one of the things we talked a little bit earlier about how the world of, I guess, I don't remember the exact terminology, but it's people who find out late in their life that they're adopted, that, that mirrors a lot of what happens when a person discovers that they're an NPE. Now, so much of the psychological advice on those things has changed even in our lifetime. Initially what you were told was that, if you adopted a kid, especially if they were really young, that you never tell them that they're adopted, so that you're always their parent and that kid's always your kid, and that they never go looking for, their biological parents, because that can be really devastating for them, when they find those things out. And then, later we see in like the 80s and 90s that those things begin to change. And, we've discovered after several studies that those kids that do find out that they're adopted, that their whole identity is now, really, really shaken. And so the schools of thought have changed on all of that drastically in really the last 40 to 50 years. So being that NPEs are a relatively new thing in the way that you guys are discovering it, and when I say you guys, I mean people who are experiencing this, who are NPEs now, because of the heritage test, right? The stuff from Ancestry and 23andMe and all of these things. Now there's this whole new branch of discovery that's happening. What kind of maybe like studies or profiles or things are you guys seeing that are taking place, or are those kind of things out there yet?
Gosh, you have a lot of insight into this. I didn't know you knew so much about
talk
the
about it a
adoptee
lot.
world.
Yeah, we talk a lot.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so good. Mostly I talk to people and they're completely clueless about, the childhood trauma that comes with being adoptee and being raised in secrecy. But yes, so that's what we're trying to do right now is you have to be a bit of a pioneer in a field that doesn't exist yet. I mean, we have the adoptee community to go off of, but we're just a bunch of like podcasters, authors, little advocacy groups, a couple Facebook forum moderators. There's 20 of us. We're trying to get together and we're like, we need our own field of counseling. I mean,
Right.
we need our own special, it's a little bit of grief counseling. It's a little bit of mixture of take a little bit from grief, a little bit from marriage and family therapy. I don't know. They would have to come up with it. But
Right.
yeah, they don't have a ton of studies on this. We have Gina J. Daniels and a few other grad students and or postdocs that are trying to collect this data by interviewing NPEs and seeing what are the patterns here. What is consuming your mind at night that's keeping you up, and how can we help? So I can't really draw on a lot of studies. I was just reading some infographics yesterday because it was National DNA Day. It's when the double helix they finished the Human Genome Project, and it's when they founded the DNA, the double helix. And so they had a bunch of stats out yesterday on NPEs and people that are finding out DNA surprises through spit tests.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what we need. We need more. We need some, monies.
Yeah.
Education. We need people to know what it is, and so we can get some support.
On the forums, one of the most common things we see is people that do go seek out therapy is that they can't find a therapist that can help them.
Oh, no doubt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what do you do? Oh, I found out that my dad's not my dad. Like, hey, that sounds like a book I once read. Like, I don't like I'm gonna have to go find it in the library and start from there. So there's so much about this new field that's that's interesting as people are making these kind of discoveries. One of the things that I heard about that at first was kind of jarring is new sibling season.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
talk,
what is that?
talk to us about like what new sibling season is, because this is
season.
Yeah, this is a phenomena that is like specific to the NPE community. Talk to us about new sibling season.
Okay, yeah, I can think of it in two ways. So when you take your spit kit, your DNA test, you may have gotten it on a Black Friday special, or maybe as a Christmas present from a family member.
Sure.
And so you take it thinking you take it right away. You're going to get results, but those usually take 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes even 6 to 8 weeks if it gets backed up. So if you want to find more people in your database, a lot of times, like 6 to 8 weeks after a holiday, after Christmas, you're going to open your DNA results and you're going to all of a sudden, maybe you're going to find a parent-child match, maybe a new half-sibling. So it's sibling season because people that are looking for their family, I mean, I found mine in one day, but other people really have to search. And all of a sudden you're going to have like 2 new half sisters show up and everything's going to make sense in your family tree. So sibling season, it can also refer to when donor conceived people who didn't know they were born donor conceived. And they're trying to find out exactly how many times did my sperm donor donate in this fertility clinic. And they can have like over 100 siblings, and it takes a while for them to find all of them. So yes,
we get a
sibling
lot of new members in our forums, like come March, April.
Yeah.
It starts blowing up.
So,
So there's tax season, and then
there's new sibling
everyone
season.
let's spit into a tube and let's send it off.
Yeah.
Because it's on Black Friday.
I'm really curious. You mentioned something that if it got brought up naturally, then I would address it, and if it didn't, I was gonna kind of stay hands off.
You're buttering it up. A good question.
Thank you. The new sibling season sometimes comes because a person has donated. Now, I will say, like when we were in college, this was one of the things, and it's kind of like the dirty secret that people really don't talk about, even if you've done it.
I didn't do that.
I didn't either, right? And part of the reason that I didn't, though,
I got a job at Chili's.
there was a lot of like you can donate plasma, and there's always going to be somebody at the plasma place or whatever that they're looking for certain types of people, and they're like, well, have you thought about donating sperm?
Yes.
And when I first got approached about it, they were like, "Look, you're a little short. I'm 5'8" in a brand new pair of Ariats." But
you're just handsome.
But that was the thing. They're like, you've got an athletic build. You've got
musical talent.
Yeah, you've got a high IQ. So there's
Wit.
a lot of things where people will give up the fact
Great
that you're
beard.
you're a midget, but a lot of women won't care about that because you got a lot of other things working for you. Thankfully, my wife was one of those. So when they put this thing together and they present it to you, there's a lot of money that could be made by doing this. And so especially with young guys, it's got an appeal. Now, the reason that I didn't at the time was, as a person of faith, I'm wondering like how much responsibility do I have to these kids? And so that was the exact thing that like shooed me away from it. Well, as Heather and I have been talking, and as you just mentioned, like some of these guys have hundreds and hundreds
they
and
make
hundreds
careers
of
out of
kids.
it.
Yeah. And so like as you're finding those siblings, how much different and I know that wasn't your personal experience, but as a person who's talked with several people that this has been their story, how much different do you think the process is for people who find out that they were conceived by a donor versus like have a completely different father that it was a consensual relationship or something of that nature?
Yeah. And isn't that unfair, by the way, that they specifically, fertility banks and sperm banks specifically find 18 and 19-year-old college males. They frequently are on college campuses. I mean, how unethical is that? You're trying to talk to a teenager and offer them $100, $250, and they're not playing the tape forward like a child may come of this, or several dozen. And one day they're going to want to get married, raise a family, and all of a sudden find out they have how many children. They're just thinking of the cash. I think that's so wrong how sperm banks do that, just on my personal opinion.
No, sure.
It is just over the line after it no longer being considered statutory behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, it's right there in that same.
Right there.
It's exploitive, and they don't. And of course, they're buttered up in these. I know someone that just bought is thinking about buying 3 tubes, and she was like, oh, of sperm. And the donor conception world is so unregulated.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable, especially in America. You're allowed to donate unlimited times. I mean, Australia, they at least make it 1 per 25. They actually have cities that have how many times you're allowed to donate, because if you think about that, if you have hundreds of children in one city that are half siblings by different birth mothers that get artificially inseminated, they're going to grow up and they could fall in love and marry and have kids with their half sibling.
From my
this can happen in the
understanding,
NPE world too.
There is no regulation on there's no one, I don't know what you'd call it, government agency or whatever that actually regulates the donor industry. Like, breeding animals is more regulated than breeding humans.
That is
Yeah,
so odd.
it's willy-nilly. It's ridiculous. And it's still going on right now. The donor conceived world. Oh, were you going to say something?
No. It's
very jarring.
It's appalling.
Of all the things that are regulated,
Right.
Video games are regulated,
Yeah.
and not. I'm gonna leave that.
There's
not,
a-
not
there's a
biological
group-
donations.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, I don't remember the name, but there's a group that does, like, they'll give guidelines, but there is no one, like, they're not answerable to anybody.
My neighbor has a donor conceived child. They're a lesbian couple. They have a donor conceived child, and she has 125 siblings locally.
Oh my gosh.
Locally?
Yes, from a local sperm bank. It's
Whoa.
maddening. Yeah, because some of these donors, they list themselves as, I'm a medical student, I'm this height, I'm this, this race, this whatever, and people they're like super donors, and they maybe also have some, figure out what kind of complex they have to want to create that many children. Sometimes it's more than just money. It's like their donors might have some sort of a power complex going on.
That definitely that has dangerous implications. Is it? I think it's Iceland, or maybe it's Norway or Greenland. One of those.
Okay.
That the gene pool is so small.
Oh, Iceland.
That it is Iceland. That they have a dating app that checks if you're related to the person or not.
Yes.
We in theory, fast forwarding 100 years, could be there in some of these areas.
Well, so
Yes.
it's so weird. And one of the things that we've seen change from what the trends were, let's say 20 years ago, right? When the internet had just started, before Match was a big thing, is that it was way better. One of the things that happened was that there was this disengagement between young men and young women. And we've continued to see that as the internet has gotten larger and larger, social media sites have grown, that there is this disengagement, especially between the younger generations, of going out and talking to people.
Also personal interactions.
Yeah, the personal interactions are down. And so there is this idea that it's easier to do it via either a donor or something like that. I've listened to a few other podcasts who kind of work in the same realm that you do. One in particular, though, where they were talking about a young lady who finds out that she was an NPE. She goes and she confronts her mom and dad about it. Why didn't you tell me? The mom and dad have to go back to their bank where they did their fertility treatments, and the mom and dad did not have any viable eggs. And so they just gave them somebody else that was close enough that matched their profile. And so now the whole family is devastated. When we're talking about how unregulated this is, like, that was just something that the doctor was allowed to do. He was allowed not to tell him. And, the mom went through that entire thing. They did the best they could to match up, ethnicities and blood types so that it was plausible. And, the mom comes to find out that, like, that doctor had been fired. He'd been sued by several people, and that he'd passed away. And now they're just kind of sitting in that. This whole thing is it's totally bizarre to me. So you let's get back to Lily's story before we all just get off on a tangent of how ridiculous this is, right? So you found out you've kind of reconciled a bit with your dad, like some things with your biological father now make a little bit more sense. You and your sister have had a couple of conversations about it. You've unfortunately had this strain of emails with your biological father, and he's kind of told the family to back off. So now you're dealing with all this really on your own in a lot of ways. How do you go from, okay, I'm trying to figure and sort out all my own stuff, to I'm going to create a podcast where other people tell these stories? Because that does not seem like the jump a lot of people would make. I see a lot of people in that situation that are going like, you know what, either me and my family need to sort through this, or I'm just going to isolate and lock myself in a room for a few days or whatever. On the other hand, you make this huge step to not just go public with your story, but to create this space where other people can share theirs. How do you make that leap?
Yeah, I know. And that was totally on accident. I just wanted to hear stories in audio format. I wanted to hear them. I was hurting. I was in a lot of pain that first month. And I was in these, once I found the term NPE, I'm Googling it, and I find myself in these Facebook forums, and people are sharing their stories, and I am scrolling for hours nodding along. I'm just like, people are like, here's my story. I found out today. I found out last month. And I'm reading them and like nodding along with them. But I can't just stare at a blue light like all day and all night. I can't just be on a device because I was glued to my devices reading. I still need to pick up kids. I need to cook. I need to fold laundry. I'm like, if I could just hear these in a podcast format or in an audio format, I'd be good, because then I still feel I'm connecting to people and I'm listening. And they're talking about feelings that I've been feeling, but I just need to hear it. So I typed in NPE into, the Apple podcast platform. Nothing showed up. I typed in a couple other words. Nothing really showed up. And so I just threw out a trailer in a week or two, just like a 30-second trailer. And I thought no one would find it. I did zero promotion. I had no audio equipment. I used like my, earbuds or whatever. I just put out a trailer saying for people to come and share their NPE story. And and I came up with a little Gmail address, and like no one contacted me. So I'm like, that's exactly what I thought would happen.
Right.
Because I didn't tell anyone. I didn't promote it. I didn't even use my name. I just used my first name, Lily, for like the first year, actually. I never used my last name. And so finally I went on a forum and I found one person. And so I could get one episode recorded. And and I did it. I recorded one episode. I put it out there, and it got like 500 listens. And I was like, how are people finding this? Like, what? And then I get a couple emails, but they're spread out. Like every couple weeks I get another person I'll share. So I didn't even have enough for like a weekly episode or bi-weekly.
But you're just killing it with 500 listens on your first episode. Our first episode was 2 years ago. I don't know that it's got 500 listens.
I don't know. I think other people had figured out this term and they're also typing it in. It is it was so wild.
It was an NPE
and
season.
Now,
yeah.
Well,
now
our
it's
forums?
I still don't do promotion, and people now I've got a waiting list of like 40 weeks worth of content.
Oh my gosh.
Of people that want to share their stories.
Sure. Heather, you were saying
on the forums, if there's like anything remotely NPE related in the world, someone posts it immediately. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone posted it and then like everyone all at once was like, what? Where?
So what you're saying is this is likely to be like our most listened to episode. This is great. That's perfect. That's what we're looking for. Thank you, Lily, for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you start doing this. Now you got a backlog of 40 people.
Yeah.
Is there any point where, and this is, I'm pulling from, we do a lot of work with sex trafficking, with safe houses and with sex trafficking awareness in our county. And really, so North Texas, unfortunately, North Texas is one of the big thoroughfares because of our proximity to Mexico and how unregulated things are, is one of the thoroughfares which people use in order to transport survivors and, well, at the time, victims and then later survivors of trafficking. So we've worked with several of those places. One of the things that the safe houses in particular have to watch out for is associated trauma. Now, whether you are a person who has come out of, if you're a survivor of trafficking and now you're working with people that have been trafficked, or if you have never been trafficked, you've only been around people that have been, that now you're experiencing some of the same trauma that they are. Again, if you're a survivor of it and you're around, now you're almost experiencing like a secondhand trauma from those people who have been in that situation. With a backlog of 40 people, you've done several episodes. Like, is there a point at which you've either felt overwhelmed or like had to take a break because now you are, putting yourself in a situation, like, it's great that they're telling their stories, but now you're in a place where you're experiencing that trauma over again? Has anything like that happened?
Gosh, yeah, I know what you're talking about, especially in the sex trafficking world. I can't even imagine that, hearing those stories and then just being so compassionate for them and just having it hurt inside listening to that. Yes, I feel that same feeling when I listen to people. I just got off a 4:00 interview today, and I have no mental health background, so I didn't learn what they learn in school about detachment and listening with empathy, but without getting too pulled in. But I definitely get drained listening to some of them. But I've learned I can also get re-energized, not excited from listening to them, but just like I'm nodding along with them, like, oh my God, yes, I know that feeling. So it's the good can often outweigh the bad, but it has been very overwhelming at times. I once had a couple really hard emails through the podcast email account, and I had to go for a walk around my pond out here, and it was a woman that just found out her husband was her half-brother in a small town, and she was devastated.
Whoa.
And her children are actually, and I just hurt for her so bad. She ended up not recording with us. She was in so much trauma herself. She couldn't even tell her own story. She wanted to talk to me, but she couldn't record. Anyway, yes, it gets to me sometimes, but I just think of it as service work.
Yeah.
And that seems to help me along when you get pulled into the sadness of some of the stories. I used to get really mad at listening to people and how they're being treated by various family members or parents. But now I just really identify with them, compassion and empathy. But yeah, it's definitely been the struggle. Luckily, my best friend across the street is a social worker, so she helps me debrief.
That's awesome. Hey, I just did an interview. I need a cup of coffee, some ice cream, and whatever Keebler cookies you have.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
What kind
and
of
my husband hears it a lot too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What kind of feedback have you gotten from past guests, that have come on and shared their story? Have they said that it helped them? Was it, you mentioned, kind of dredging up some of that trauma again. Yep. But what have you heard from them?
I know that's one thing that I've actually been considering, Dan, is just like, are they being re-traumatized having to talk about this? That's something I learned about later when I'm asking people to share these stories. Are they being re-traumatized having to talk about this? But I now, towards the end of their episode, I give them the option, if they're not remaining anonymous, because some of them change their names, they can leave a way to get in touch with them. And so the feedback I'm getting is, oh, I got 8 emails, or, oh, the so-and-so found me on Facebook
awesome.
and said they have the same kind of mom as me. And so it's actually kind of nice. I feel like, well, at least they're connecting in their own little way, because not everyone's on social media. So other people are starting to form friendships through the podcast and reach out to, like, if they listen to a story and they're like, I have the same sort of sister as her, they can, if they want, reach out to them and just say a little, thank you for sharing. I know I get your story. I have the same situation. Yeah, so I'm getting positive feedback, but I do have to be aware of, I don't want anyone to come out of this hurting. And that's why it's volunteer only. Yeah. People, they come to me if they want to share, and they can change their mind, and they frequently do.
Yeah.
I get cancellations. Yes.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm sure that there are times where you record an episode and somebody's like, hey, that was really great, but if you could not air that, that would be awesome. I mean, we end up with that, and we're interviewing people, and then we'll get done with an interview, and they're like, dude, we had so much fun. And then the next day we get an email, and they're like, hey, we had too much fun. We don't need any of that to go out. So we've experienced some of that also. I'm curious now, like you're helping other people kind of process this. You've been through the process yourself. You said this happened in 2019 is when you found out. So it's been a few years. What was it like for your nuclear family? What's it like for your husband and your kids to go through this? Like what do you tell your kids? Like, hey, your granddad's not your granddad. That grandma, we're not going to see grandma for a little while because her and I are having a thing. Like what does that do to the family? How do you explain that to everybody?
Oh man, this is a hard one. Because in my particular case, I chose estrangement, and I'm not saying that's what everyone should do. I just have a sort of certain type of personalities in my family that it was safest and healthiest for me and my children to stop contact. I know that sounds really painful and confusing. A lot of people are like, you don't let your kids see their grandma? But I have a certain type of mother. So when I found out, I, in an age-appropriate manner, told my children exactly what you said. Yeah, actually, you have a different grandpa than you thought. It's been shocking for mommy. We're going to figure this out. I didn't give them a ton of information, but I always answered their questions. The hardest part for them was, why can't we go to their house for Easter? And that was so painful. And I often thought about doing what a lot of other people do, where you just sweep things under the rug and keep going and bring that side dish of mashed potatoes or whatever. But in my case, I wasn't treated well, and I was treated pretty cruelly, and honestly like I was being problematic and a troublemaker when I came out with the truth. And so I did choose, first I did a couple sit downs with my mom and tried to do it the right way, wrote some stuff out, followed what some communication skills my therapist had recommended, but ultimately had to ask her to leave and chose to go no contact with her. And that was hard on the kids. My husband was relieved. Again, this is a certain sort of personality.
Yeah.
Well, and I should say, no, I can't diagnose anyone,
Sure.
but we're talking about potential narcissistic personality disorder and borderline personality disorder. Okay. Again, I can't diagnose, but I've looked at the DSM-5 and a lot of the traits fit, like 7 out of 9 actually. So this is not someone who's has any remorse or regret. This, my mom, and she's not trying to work it out with me. She's not trying to be in her grandkid's life.
Oh, that
Obviously,
stinks.
I would be there and like if she has a desire to work on it, let's work on it. But so yeah, it was really painful for my granddaughter especially. And now we're still just working through it, just really trying to make holidays great. And I'm just trying to give all the love that they would have normally gotten from additional adults in their life. But it's sad to go. No one ever chooses to be estranged from a parent.
Yeah.
It has to be a really good reason to not want a mother in your life. So,
Well, if your kids are into Star Wars, we can give them extra stuff. But outside of that, our expertise is fairly low. Star Wars or Batman. Yeah. They were like, hey, no, we'll just send Lily's kids this so they can be like, hey, these are her podcasting friends.
Actually, I can relate. We, we also have, my wife has certain family members of a certain type, I like the way you put it, that we chose to cut out for a while. There was, decisions made to promote violence with her.
Yeah.
And it dawned on both of us that, especially me, it hit me hard when I found out and kind of processed it that I'm going to have to answer to my son someday in the future. Why didn't you protect mom? Why didn't you keep these people away? So we had to make those decisions. It was not fun, but it was the right call. And since then we've allowed a couple of them back in. So I wanted to leave the door open for some
further reconciliation.
Reconciliation there.
Yeah.
But I agree. It's
you get it.
not fun.
Yeah.
When you become a parent, everything changes. Like you can go ahead and treat me like crap my whole childhood and my whole teenage and young adulthood. But now I'm a mom. I'm a mama bear. I'm going to protect my children, and I have a healthy, stable environment in my house. And I'm going to do things differently and not live under secrecy. But yes,
well, tell your kids that Uncle Danley and Lucas say hi, and that we're additions.
Aw,
and Aunt Heather.
And Aunt Heather, yeah, we're happy to be here. Lily, we can't thank you enough for just sharing your story and talking about the work that you do on NPE stories. But we end all of our interviews with a segment that we call Controlled Rowdiness. And I don't know if you've previewed the show or not, but this is a segment of rapid fire questions, which you can answer with as short or as lengthy an answer as you would like. There are no right answers, but there are several wrong answers. So be careful about that. And to get us going, I'm going to pass this over to Dan.
Okay. Well, I've got an odd question.
Here we go.
So I was at a wedding recently. I'm curious from a female perspective. Is it creepy to take a slow motion camera shot of the first kiss of the married couple from the back?
Yes.
Okay. That's what my wife said also as I was showing the video to everybody and thinking about editing it with some nice music underneath.
Oh, that's sweet. I just watched Bridgerton today, and that's something they would have done. A slow motion.
Okay,
I thought it was great.
First she said it was creepy, now she says it's sweet. There's a juxtaposition there.
I will say, when I was thinking about editing it, I asked my wife, I said, what's that song that goes, I'm a really fine trying, baby. And I went, no.
Yeah,
that was a bad idea.
Yeah, worst song ever.
Yes. So thank you.
Yeah. So you mentioned that now you've gone from being, a daughter to now you're a mama bear. If you could give us the type of mama bear that you think you are you a grizzly bear? Are you a polar bear? Are you like a sun bear?
Black bear.
Panda.
Panda.
Yeah.
Panda.
Koala.
Panda.
Don't leave the koalas out.
Yeah, we don't.
Oh, that's so cute. I wish I was a koala bear.
They are not.
I gotta.
Let's be careful with cute. They are vicious.
Really?
Yes, and they all have chlamydia.
Oh yes, I have heard that.
Yeah, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to say
before
panda
you said
bear.
koala, I wanted you to know.
They have chlamydia.
Okay. Yeah. So panda bear. All right, that makes sense.
Pandas are
Yeah,
cool.
because you always can see them little video clips of them like playing on the slide, tumbling down. I feel like, I dance around. I feel like I identify with the panda bears.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Panda is a good choice. again, there's no right answers, but I approve.
Yeah, there are. That was not a wrong answer.
I'm guessing
Panda bear.
koala is wrong.
Yeah, koala is definitely wrong.
They're
But
cute,
they do have that pouch,
but
and
they
that
are
means your hands
mean.
free.
And
But they're also like
I've already said
high 20 hours out of the day because eucalyptus makes them high,
Yep.
and that's all they eat.
So they're fascinating, if nothing else.
If a koala's awake, it's got the munchies and it's upset. It's paranoid. That's what it is. It's having a really bad
Weird.
time. Yeah.
I'm gonna leave that.
You're up.
Okay.
You're up.
Next question. NPE stands for several things we talked about. Not parent expected, if I got that right, and then also maybe not paternal expected. What was that term?
Non-paternal event. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Not-
Is there
not
such
new
a thing?
parent?
Yeah.
Yeah, new parent event.
Okay.
That's what we were trying to come up with earlier, and I was like, I think it stands for new parent event, and Heather's like, don't say that to her.
I'll print you out the list of acronyms afterwards.
Okay, great.
Is there such a thing as an NME, which is the not mother expected, but the father is the father?
They don't use that term, but well, yes, there is switched at birth, kidnapping, and then you find out through a DNA test, or donor conceived egg donor. I guess you mentioned so
Weird.
but usually it would be both parents.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess where the father, the paternal father, is raising the child with a mother, and it turns out that she's not the mom.
Yes,
I can
it
see
is.
that being
Yeah,
rarer, but yep, that makes sense.
That's
very rare. I mean, more rare.
It seems like maybe the most rare. That whole
I have an even rarer one.
that
Is
hurts
the
my
most
head to
rare
think about.
NPE.
Oh, here we go.
Finding out that your father is the Golden State Killer.
What?
That happened.
Okay, that's a totally different line of questioning. We've got
But it happened.
Yeah, we've got a guest that's coming on, and then there's a
No, Golden State Killer. They found out through DNA and
Yeah,
me
through
or
the
whatever.
yeah.
One of those that they found out who the Golden State Killer was because of the DNA testing.
yeah.
Finding out
Oh,
that he's
yeah.
related.
That's terrifying.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I just kind of brought it.
Yeah, way
Sorry.
to bring it
Kinda
down,
brought everything
Danley.
down.
Sorry, that one was a bummer. Next.
Yeah, so you said that you're French Canadian, or that you have that in your background as far as like how you were raised. So is it Quebec, or Quebec?
Oh, how about Quebec? You said that one? I would say Quebec with the U. Quebec.
Quoi?
Oui, oui.
What's your favorite movie?
Twister.
What?
I have a couple friends that's their favorite.
Twister?
Love Twister.
Okay, the top 3 reasons why Twister's your favorite movie, starting with number 2.
Helen Hunt.
Okay, great, perfect.
Gosh, I can't remember their names. Bill Paxton.
Okay.
I love the nerdy storm chasing vibe of it.
And he
I love
died a
that.
couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy that died. Yes, he was.
Bring it down again, Danley.
Yeah, I
Way to
know.
go. What a bummer.
That's my job. You're a reprobate. You keep
All right,
talking. I'm going to find his name.
I'm going to steal Danley's question real quick. So, if there was a name that you could use other than the, when we talked about the DNA is collected in the spit tube, right? What's the proper name for that? Is there one?
Shoot. Oh man, we all just call them the spit tube. the
Okay,
test-
because we've got for the spit kits, we've got other names as options, and we want to know which of these you think would be better marketing for Ancestry,
Oh, cool.
23andMe, and all that. Would you go with the slobber collector, the snot shell, the drool tunnel, the dribble conduit, or the loogie flask?
What's the first one again?
The slobber collector was the first one.
That's cute. Oh my gosh, all of those are really cute.
I like
they would get a
loogie
kick out of
flask.
it. There was a tunnel one. I like that one.
Yeah, the drool tunnel.
The drool tunnel. I like that one.
Okay.
Drool.
Philip Seymour Hoffman was his name, by the way.
Oh, Philip
That's
Seymour
it.
Hoffman.
I did some
Yeah.
fast research.
Wow,
earlier.
well done. All right, Danley, wrap
I
us up.
typed in IMDb and found it. I don't have a last one. You go.
Okay, aliens have landed, and you've
Yes.
got 60 seconds
This is
to
my
tell
question.
them a story that is so great that they will not destroy the world. And your time starts now.
Oh my gosh, this is scary. Why they shouldn't destroy the world?
Yeah, you would.
Yeah, you
well,
tell
we
them a
hope.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember your kids
Tell them,
are on this
tell them
planet.
a story. Okay. Putting me on the spot. I don't know.
You got about 45 seconds left. They're firing up the lasers.
Shoot. I don't have any great stories. You guys, I'm not funny like you. You guys are funny. I listen
have
to
to
your
be.
podcast.
Yeah, you could tell a
I'm
dramatic
not
story in the
dramatic
next 30
story.
seconds.
Where'd you get your sweater?
Nordstrom.
Okay, great. What happened at Nordstrom's?
I've got a foundation matching appointment there tomorrow morning, so I can't.
Are you going to get a pretzel?
Do they give pretzels
No,
at
not
Nordstrom?
found-
Aliens love pretzels.
No, not at Nordstrom.
No, but at this
No.
mall, right?
Yes, Auntie Anne's.
There you go.
Aunt Annie's.
So you're gonna go to.
I'm sorry, that was so lame. That was such a lame story.
The
Call
Men in
it.
Black intervened, and you're fine.
Thank you. Thank you for saving me. Oh my God,
welcome.
that was terrible.
Thanks, Tommy Lee Jones. Well, Lily, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for coming, for sharing your story. Make sure to check out the NPE Story podcast and tell our guests where it is that they can find you if they want to maybe get involved or to share their story as well.
Oh, yes. NPEstories.com is the domain. There's also an NPE Stories Facebook page. And you can email npestories@gmail.com.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks so much for being on.
Thank you so much, you guys. You're funny.
Lily freaking Wood. So what you guys missed out is in between Lily signing off and us trying to get a wrap up done is just a comedy of errors. But she was an absolutely amazing guest.
Mm-hmm.
Heather, you mentioned that there's like a list of acronyms other than NPE.
NPE, MPE, misattributed parentage, LDA, late adoption discovery, BCF, birth certificate father. Yes, there's a whole sheet.
Okay, so we're just going to list all of those as like keywords for this video and for that, because there's so many people that not just don't understand this, but that are experiencing, something like this, an NPE event for the first time that don't know, how to not only like how to process it, but how to find stuff out. I thought that was really interesting when she was talking about, I went on Google and was like, my dad's not my dad. What do you, like, what do the people at Google Central do with that? And they're like, oh, hey, let's ship you off to here. That's such an odd thing, not just to experience, but then to have to try to find it. And so the work that she's doing with helping people tell their stories is really incredible. And then listening to the process that she went through, I think is just fascinating because it's so unique to not just the experience of other people who are NPEs, but it is a unique part of our culture, which has to do with where technology is, the ancestry stuff, like the tiniest little sliver of the population has to deal with this, and yet the trauma that those people have to deal with is huge.
Think you might just not know yet.
Yeah, okay, that's a creepy but good point, right?
What was creepier, me filming slow motion first kiss at a wedding or that?
Or Heather going, you just might not know yet. Yeah.
No, it is interesting that there's potentially a whole lot of, I mean, okay, I was thinking about this, Scrubs,
Sure. Yeah.
Scrubs, the
Yeah.
TV show. Dr. Cox does not want to get a full body scan, I think is what it is, a scanner, because everything is going to show up, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to know all of the secrets your body is holding, even innocuous, unharmful ones. Mm-hmm. If we roll that out, if everyone goes and finds this out, there's potentially for a enormous amount of people that, like Lily said, will have the worst day of their life finding out that they are not who they, thought they were. At least from a, parental perspective.
Yeah, I did think it was interesting that she identified so much with the French part of her heritage, right? And when you look at, for people who have been to Canada or know about the way that the provinces in Canada work, like Quebec is a separatist province. They want to be their own country. They are. The culture there is completely different than it is.
And they're French. They're snooty for French people.
Well, and the culture there is completely different than the rest of Canada, and yet, right, the people that are there identify so heavily with being from Quebec, like I would say almost more than people from Texas identify with being Texan. They identify with being from Quebec, and this is who we are. Well, then
we're snooty too in Texas, but we have barbecue, so
right. But like if that got ripped from you. Yeah, right? They're like, this isn't what you are. This isn't who you are. These aren't your people, because it isn't.
You just framed this for me.
Yeah. So like it would be different in a way that I think is for us just totally unfathomable. Yeah. Because like you're at that point, like your whole heritage, your whole upbringing, like everything is a lie in a certain way of looking at it. I mean, Heather, you can speak to this in a different way than we can. Obviously, like what was that part of the process like for you whenever you looked at my heritage?
When I looked
isn't
at
my
it
heritage.
and I'm like, I'm 25% Italian. Like what?
Yeah.
Where did that come from? I was no percent before.
Yeah, it's just her left hand that's the 25% Italian. Yeah, whenever she's getting onto her husband, I cannot believe you did it.
You mean I could have had good spaghetti this whole time and I never knew? Yeah. It's
you got to make the water as salty as the sea.
Yeah, I don't think I found anything crazy because, I just figured European, but adding some Italian in wasn't crazy. But I guess maybe more of missing out on that.
Yeah.
Because my grandmother was 100% Italian. My great-grandmother came over here from Italy, and I didn't get to know any of that. Or those people or that, because they have the very huge Italian family that does all the big stuff together, and I missed all of that.
That's organized crime.
That's what.
Yeah,
potentially.
I heard a little bit of that. Yeah.
Yeah, which I could see with Heather's just all around demeanor.
Yeah.
Like, first off, let me tell you some things I know about Heather. Heather ain't no
gabagool.
Heather ain't no snitch.
We're devolving in a wonderful way.
But man, thanks Lily so much for coming on the show. Make sure that you check out the links to the NPE stories in the show notes. And I will say, if you know somebody that has gone through this, because it's happening more and more and more often, right?
There's
just
a season
showing them,
for it.
Yeah, like showing them the resources that are there. And I'll also say this: if you like a good mystery, Lily's podcast, the way that she does it, it's almost set up like a mystery or like true crime, and the way that she walks people through telling their stories, like it's got that kind of vibe to it. It's like, so
Yeah, the music
when
is
you
great
found out,
underneath
right,
it.
and her voice,
Yeah.
just how like just soothing and stuff it is, the way that she does everything.
We did talk in between that we think that she could voice a Pixar character.
Oh, no
easy.
doubt. Absolutely. But she would voice the Pixar character that was like, that did America's, what was it, Unsolved Mysteries?
Yeah.
She did Unsolved Mysteries for stuff that happened in Andy's room. Like that's how I would want to hear, that's how I'd want to hear Lily's voice. Is like, out she comes with, on this episode of What Happened While Andy Was Gone. Yeah, like it's just fascinating. She puts the podcast together really well.
The milkman's knocking on the door.
And on that, we'll say thanks. Make sure that you check out the links in the show notes. Heather, thanks so much for coming on. Thank you guys for watching and for listening. Y'all have good Get Give, and we will see you next week.
Hi, I'm Lily Wood of NPE Stories, and this is why you should never listen to the Reverend and the Reprobate, because they will ask you very tricky questions and put you on the spot, asking you what sort of dramatic story to tell aliens. And that is just too much for my heart rate. That was anxiety producing.